Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit of the WoW podcast, Blue Please on CynicalBrit.com. I'm fairly sure I couldn't fly here before. Indeed, you cannot. But you can on the PTR. This is the Ghostlands, which actually has been locked down since the launch of Cataclysm in terms of being able to free fly in it. You can now fly in the Ghostlands, and we're going to have a look at the Ghostlands from the air because it's kind of neat to do so. What we'll also do is see what happens when you don't quite properly wall off your content. Now, what I will say is that the Silvermoon area and the Eversong Woods cannot be flown in. If you fly past the border of that, there will be no warning. You will be dropped directly from your mount and you will most likely die. So that kind of needs to be dealt with. One assumes that they will try and either put in a warning or add a parachute mechanic to that so that you won't have loads of people dying as they fly in here. It's kind of neat to have a look at the architecture of this area because it's not an area I'm really all that familiar with. I didn't bother doing the Blood Elf starting zone. I mean, why would I? I don't roll alts, so I think the only bit of the Blood Elf starting zone I did was actually back at BlizzCon. Which one? One of the BlizzCons anyway, when we were playing stuff like that and we got in there very early. But whatever the case, it's kind of neat nonetheless, although it does show in a very obvious manner the fact that this area is lagging behind somewhat in terms of the graphical texture work and just how advanced the models actually are. The tree models here are particularly poor, possibly even more so than the trees in Azeroth. Now, this area is going to be visited a lot more, which is probably why they're re-enabling flying. Bear in mind that Zul Aman will now be an instance which you're going to want to go to. Admittedly, you're not going to go to it all that much, because you can simply use the dungeon finder for it. Whatever the case, this is where Zul Aman is, and as you can tell, my Wind Rider is extremely pissed at the idea of going anywhere near that. This entire area is full of invisible ceilings, as well as invisible walls, and often what you'll find is that your mount will constantly protest for even flying here. I can only imagine that's simply due to the fact that it's not finished yet. Now, as much as I would love to say you can fly over Zul Aman, you cannot. There are very strict ceilings and walls there. This is about as high as we can get, and the closer we get to it, the further we will actually slide down. Far as I know, Zul Aman isn't actually open yet. There's a issue with the item level, and it's something like item level 500 or whatever, so you can't get in there yet. Don't worry, that's not what it's supposed to be. The minimum for this is going to be item level 346, and the items you're going to be getting from it are going to be item level 353, and bear in mind this will be a 5-man dungeon. I'll go fly over to Deathhome, and then I'll show you what happens with the instance portal, because re-enabling flying has had some unintended consequences, and it also shows exactly how the instancing actually works, and what they actually do in order to fool you with their smoke and mirrors kind of trick. Indeed, as I've said before the Cataclysm, most of the terrain in the old world was effectively made of cardboard. It was scenery, and they wouldn't necessarily put things behind it. Some of it would be two-dimensional, although you might be surprised to see just how far they go to make it look like it's really there and really joined into the world, when in reality, of course, this entire area is one giant instance that is probably somewhere geometrically and geographically somewhere completely different. You know, it could be stacked on top of another, and that's often how some games work, actually, that you'd think that the levels would be designed in the way that you'd see them. They connect logically. They actually don't. A lot of the time when you do level transitions, they're in like a big stack, or there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on there. All of the ways in which a world is joined together are often very much illusionary. And it's very cool to explore that and to have a look at the concepts behind it. It interests me anyway. Maybe it bores the hell out of you, but whatever the case, you're still watching this video, so it can't be all that dull. So this is Deathhome, of course. Yes, indeed, a very cool area. And Deathhome is on the border of the Ghostlands, and this is very close to where the instance is. So what I'm looking for here is a way through. I'm looking for a gap. I'm looking for something that they've missed, and that's the kind of thing that I used to do in the beta in order to get access to content that wasn't open yet, and that kind of thing. You know, it's exploring. It potentially can get you banned on the live servers, although if you do it on the PTR, you're actually testing, and obviously if Blizzard's watching this, yeah, so I found a hole. I will show it to you in a moment. in your walls that demonstrate something a little odd. So you may want to get that fixed before you allow this to go onto the public servers. Now, you get forced down to the ground here, but you can actually go back up again, and you can fly through there. And this doesn't actually matter. This bit's irrelevant, because that's not the instance portal. So we don't really care about that so much. Once again, my Wind Rider will constantly protest at all of this, but that's just the way of it. So we can keep going along here, and what you'll find is the instance portal to the Ghostlands and the Eversong Woods kind of area. So, there you go. That is where the instance portal is. Now, you should not be able to fly over that. And we're going to find out exactly what happens when you do. So, this area looks reasonable, and oh, where is the rest of it? Yes, indeed. So, that is a carbon copy of the area in the Eastern Plaguelands which gives you access to this. They only produced enough of it to ensure that anything you use to look past there would not get this far. You're not supposed to be able to fly over that instance portal. And that is the end of the world, quite literally. You can see it right there. It's a rather extreme cutoff. You've also got this, which, again, was there before, but this is actually a piece of scenery. You can't actually get into it. It's just designed to look in the same way at first glance as it would in the normal Eastern Plaguelands area. It is a falsehood. Now, what we see here is the fact that, you know, this is the world texture when there's nothing there. You've got the very extreme drop-off right there, and you've just got this, which is nothing. And this will technically go on forever. However, it's coded in such a way that you will gain fatigue and you will eventually die to prevent you from just keep running forevermore, which, you know, might end up crashing the game, whatever. Obviously, this is off the map. This is where the Eastern Plaguelands should be, but it's not because of the way that the zones actually work. Now, we can fly around the edge of this, and then we can fly back into Deepholm, as we will do. I'll say I'm certainly not condemning Blizzard for this. This is pretty standard, honestly. It's the kind of thing you would expect, but it is something they're going to need to fix if they want flying to be in the Ghostlands. And I know a lot of people have asked for flying in Silvermoon, and I believe also flying in the Draenei area, which I've definitely never been to before. And it's understandable they'd want it, certainly. Although, I have to say that I wouldn't put that as a particularly large priority. I understand enabling it in Ghostlands because maybe it was easier. Because, hey, I imagine Ghostlands was less of the whole cardboard scenery thing. It looked like your normal area. They could just plonk models down. Silvermoon is all custom. So there's nothing really quite like Silvermoon in the entirety of the game. So that was all created. And they're like, well, where can we save? Where can we skimp? Where do we not have to model because people aren't going to be able to see it? It's probably the reason why Orgrimmar and, to a lesser extent, Stormwind were actually remodeled. And not just say, hey, look, you can fly and we've completed all this stuff, because they probably got to the point where they couldn't do it. Huh? Like, the texture work was so bad, or just the way that it was designed just didn't lend itself to creating the city in a fully three-dimensional way that could be explored in any way from the air. And there we go. That's us back into the Ghostlands. I do wish my Wind Rider would shut the hell up. There's probably an option for that. Usually, I don't need it. But there you go. And we'll take you just along the coast here to look at the last couple of areas. Again, it's kind of cool for me because I just haven't seen this place really all that much. I like the architecture of the Blood Elves, actually. It's something rather neat. And the music here is good as well, so it's always nice to enjoy. I mean, this area is great. Look at that. That's really, really nice. Obviously, it's kind of a clone of others. Those towers appear in a lot of different places, but you know, that looks high quality. No, it does. And then you've got the Windrunner village over there, and then you've got that little island, and that's pretty much about it. Now, based on the Zul Aman theory, I would not imagine that they will enable flying in any of the Draenei areas. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. The only reason they're doing this is so you can access Zul Aman in a relatively rapid fashion. I have to wonder if they're going to ask you to discover the entrance, because I know they disabled that eventually for the Cataclysm dungeons. Maybe they'll re-enable it. So it's like, oh, well, we don't want to go there because it's a complete pain in the ass or whatever. Or if we have to fly out and then get back there. But there you go. That is the border. You will fall off your mount. Make sure you do it over the water, otherwise you will die horribly. Or indeed get your ice block ready. And that was a look at the Ghostlands from the air. Will most likely be available in 4.1. It's on the PTR right now, and I'll see you next time.